this tutorial, we'll be looking at some of the basics of animating with Incisor. We'll be working with the Incisor source character, which you can find in the example gallery on INCISORDev.com. We'll put a link in the description for that. We'll be focusing on the Incisor source animations in example 6, Construct with Timelines. As you can see, there are 4 animations: walk, run, growl, and idle. We'll be covering how to set up your art for animation and how to create some basic animations in the timeline. When animating, we'll be using the hierarchy, object, construct, and timeline panels. Feel free to arrange your workspace however you prefer. Go to the Construct panel and select the Incisor Source construct. Constructs are collections of different types of scene objects that can be built, arranged, and animated from within the Incisor GUI. For more details, check out the tutorial on constructs. When you open the construct, you'll see Incisor Source in the neutral state. The neutral state is where you set up your scene objects for animation, such as parenting, adding effect nodes, changing pivot points, and more. If you ever need to make changes to the basic structure of your construct, you need to be in the neutral state. If you hold the spacebar, you can scroll in the construct panel to move or zoom the view. When you select an object in the construct panel, that selection appears in the hierarchy panel, and more detailed information shows up in the object panel. For example, here I've selected the tip of Incisor Source's tail. In the hierarchy panel, you can see it's a child of tail 2, which is a child of tail 1, which is a child of body. In the object panel, you can see its position, scale, and rotation values, and notice that the pivot point has been adjusted so the tail rotates from the correct spot. Now let's build this from scratch so you can see how everything is set up. In the construct panel, I'll select New Construct and name it Incisor Source New. Press Command S or Control S to save. If you open the Assets folder in the Incisor project, you'll see a folder called Incisor Source Anim, which contains PNGs for all the pieces of Incisor Source. Incisor automatically generates NC data files for each PNG. You'll also see your new Incisor Source New construct file. You can move these files around for organizational purposes, just make sure they always stay within the Assets folder. Now let's go back to Incisor. In the Hierarchy panel, we'll bring in the PNGs as a graphic stack. The artwork was created in Photoshop and the layers were exported as numbered PNGs, so Incisor knows the order in which to stack them. Right-click on Incisor Source New in the hierarchy and select Add Graphic Stack, then navigate to the folder with your PNG files. You can see there are settings to control the Z range, the sublayer range, and whether to add graphics to a new scene object. There's also a checkbox to flip the front and back layers. The Z range is the distance between your layers on the Z axis. This is useful for creating parallax in your animations. The sublayer range is a distribution between -1 and 1 of the graphic's render order. Adding graphics to a new scene object creates a scene object parent for your graphic stack. This allows you to animate the entire stack inside of a single scene object. Since the PNGs were numbered in the desired order from Photoshop, we don't need to flip the front and back. The other default values here are also fine for this example. Click Add Graphic Stack, and now you'll see Incisor Source in the Construct panel, with the PNGs listed as graphic objects in the hierarchy. Since we added them to a scene object, they're grouped under Added Graphic Stack. You can rename any of the scene objects or graphic objects however you like in the Object panel. Next, we'll adjust pivot points so each object rotates correctly. For example, right now if we rotate tail 1, it spins from the center instead of where it connects to the body. To fix this, select the object in the Construct panel, hold Option-Alt, and drag the gizmo to the correct pivot location. The gizmo will turn blue, and in the Object panel, you'll see new pivot point parameters you can fine-tune numerically. Note that changing the pivot point in this manner only changes it for this instance in the project. If you want to change the pivot point for all instances of the asset in the project, you can adjust it in the Assets panel. Now let's create some parent-child relationships. For example, fingers should be children of forearms, which are children of upper arms, which are children of the body, and so on. To do this, go to the hierarchy and drag one graphic object on top of another to make it a child. Since we already adjusted pivot points, it is important that you hold Alt while dragging to create children in place. If you don't do this, you will see objects shift out of place. If that happens, just hit undo and try again. We don't need the background PNG in our animation, so we can delete it from the hierarchy. We can always re-import it later. You'll also notice that there's only one set of eyelids in our stack. We can duplicate these in the hierarchy, then position and scale them over the other eye. In the Object panel, move the eyelid sublayer so they appear in front of the pupils. Since we don't want them always visible, uncheck Visible in the Object panel. Alternatively, you can hide them by scaling to 0, setting opacity to 0, or unchecking enabled. Now that our setup is ready, let's start animating. The timeline drop-down menu is where you set up new timelines, navigate between timelines in the neutral state, and also access the Manage Timelines pop-up menu. I'll go to Timeline, New Timeline, and name it Walk. In the Timeline panel, you'll see playback controls, play, stop, and loop. You can also use the spacebar to play and pause. Stop resets the playhead to the beginning of the timeline, while pause holds it in place. By default, playback is looped, but you can disable that by clicking the loop button. The playback rate is set to 1, meaning real-time playback. You can use this to speed up or slow down your playback, but we'll leave it at 1 for this example. Now let's set the walk animation to 4 seconds. As you can see, the timeline length updates accordingly. You can navigate the timeline by clicking and dragging at the header bar, and just like in the construct panel, when you hold down the spacebar, you can move and zoom into the timeline. So let's start animating the legs. In the list of your objects in the timeline, hold Shift and select the shorts, lower legs, and sneakers. Right-click and choose Animate Scene Objects, Rotation Z. Set the initial keyframes by clicking the Set Keyframe button. Now, when you move the playhead and change rotation, new keyframes will be created automatically. I've gone ahead and added rotation keyframes for the legs, making sure to copy the first keyframes to the end so the animation loops smoothly. Continue to add keyframes for all the objects that you want animated until you have a complete looping walk cycle. As you can see, our character is walking, but it looks a little stiff. This is where the graph editor comes in. Right now, all the keyframes are linear, which makes the motion robotic. If you right-click a keyframe, you can apply easing to smooth out the movement. There are different smoothing options available, such as ease in, ease out, and smooth, which all apply different curves. Adjust the handles until the walk feels more natural. If you've applied effect nodes to your scene objects, you can also animate those in your timeline, but we'll dive deeper into effect nodes in a different tutorial. You can create more timelines and manage them in the construct panel. And that's it. Be sure to check out IncisorDev.com for more tutorials, and feel free to leave questions and feedback on Stack Overflow or our subreddit. Have fun creating with Incisor.